We left Bolverker trying to find a way to get a hand on the Mead of Poetry, owned by the giant Suttungr. His first plan, which consisted in working for Suttungr's brother Baugi and asking for the mead as payment, has failed. Bolverker needed a plan B, but the good news was, the god of strategies always had a plan B. Bolverker said they should try to trick Suttungr, because that's the best way to steal something of someone without bashing in their brains. Baugi wasn't a big fan of tricking his brother, but Bolverker reminded him that he'd promised to pay him for his good work, and his word now bound him to help. What he didn't say was that the gods never bothered keeping their promises when they made that kind of flawed deal. And after all, Baugi had promised to ask his brother, not that his brother would answer yes. So technically he'd held up his part of the deal, but he wasn't smart enough to think of that. So, despite all the reasons not to do so, Baugi offered to help. Bolverker told him they needed to do a tunnel in the mountain where Suttungr kept his mead, so they could access the cave where it was hidden. Baugi found the drill called Rati and bore a hole for Bolverker. "All done, in you go," he said. Bolverker wasn't sure he trusted Baugi, so to make sure the tunnel went right through the mountain, he blew into it. Chips of loose material came flying back towards him, proving the tunnel wasn't finished. Bolverker asked Baugi to drill deeper. Baugi, grumbling, bored the tunnel properly this time. When Bolverker blew in it again to check, all the chips flew out of the other side of the mountain. "I'm not sure this is a good idea," said Baugi. "Who cares what you think?" said Bolverker. With those words, Bolverker changed himself into a snake. Rather late, Baugi cottoned on that this couldn't be a normal worker, but had to be someone more powerful, magic. Baugi tried to squash the snake with his drill, but he missed. The snake slithered out of reach and down the tunnel he'd just dug for it. In snake shape, Bolverker got to the underground cave where the mead was kept. There he found Gunnlaug, who was doing her job of guarding the mead. It's not a coincidence that a woman is the guard here. In Norse culture, women are often linked to drink. For example, drink bearer or mead bearer are kennings for women. Also, the Valkyries in Othin's hall are the ones who pour the warriors' drinks. Examples like those can be found throughout a large variety of sources. To give only the most famous one, in Beowulf, the queen Wealhtheow is the cup-bearer. "What are you doing here?" asked Gunnlaug. "Well, I heard a treasure was hidden down here, and now I've found it." "You are, my lady, the most beautiful of treasures," said Bolverker. Being a warrior, Gunnlaug was used to men's screams, not their compliments. She was expecting people to try to wrestle the mead off her, but Bolverker proved himself so sweet and persuasive, she let him sleep 3 nights with her underground. They were such wonderful nights that Bolverker asked if, in exchange, he could have 3 sips of mead. "I'm not sure about this," muttered Gunnlaug. "My dad specifically told me not to give it away." "But will he notice 3 tiny sips?" asked Bolverker. Gunnlaug yielded. Bolverker took 1 sip out of Son, and that emptied it. Then he took a sip out of Bofn and 1 out of Othrerir, and soon the 3 containers were dry. It's important here that Othin seduces Gunnlaug rather than fight her. Through the euphoria of love, he obtains the symbol of all euphoria, poetic, divine, drink-induced. In some versions, despite having been duped, Gunnlaug cries bitter tears when Othin leaves her, proving how much she loved him. But Bolverker didn't much care for Gunnlaug, and as soon as he had the drink, he turned into an eagle and flew away. Suttungr saw an eagle take flight from the specific mountain in which he'd hidden the mead, and he guessed who the eagle could be. He turned into an eagle too, and chased after Bolverker. It's interesting here to note the parallel with the story of Ifin's apples. In both cases we have a chase between 2 birds, a woman who also symbolizes a concept, Ifin is immortality, Gunnlaug is poetry, and, for some reason, both myths also have something to do with food, the walnut first, the mead here. It's interesting too that Othin becomes first a snake and then an eagle. Both animals are present in Yggdrasil. In the world tree's roots you can find Nifhogr, and in its branches lives an unnamed eagle, or at least there are debates as to what its name actually is. Both communicate thanks to the squirrel Ratatoskr, who brings insults and gossip from one to the other. By transforming into a snake and then an eagle, Othin becomes both the evil, lower life form and the higher, regal one. He is dark and underground before becoming royal, living in the skies. This sounds like the steps of a shamanic initiation, which brings you then to truth, inspiration and poetry. Back to our bird race. Suttungr was flying close to Bolverkr, and the gods saw the chase in the sky and guessed it must be their king. They put down vats in the courtyard the other side of their stone walls, and just as Bolverkr flew above the walls, he spat the mead back into those vats. As in the race between Thjotsi and Loki, this was a very close call, and Bolverkr only just got to safety when Suttungr reached the Asgarth walls. Being respectful of boundaries, Suttungr stopped there. He understood the concept of private property better than Odin. I'm afraid there are lots of versions and subversions of the end of this story. No one seems to agree. First of all, there are two versions of this story concerning Bolverkr's arrival into Asgarth. In the first one, Bolverkr was flying so fast he made himself sick, and he threw up 3 drops of mead before he reached the gates. These drops fell on Midgard and are the share of the poets on Earth. Us humans only have inspiration through the drops Bolverkr deigned to vomit on us. There is another version, but it's barely better. In his stress, instead of having a loose stomach, Bolverkr had a loose bladder, and this time a few drops came out of his rear just as he reached the walls. I'll reassure you, this isn't the human share, it's the bad poets portion. Those who have inspiration but write terrible verse can all blame Bolverkr's prostate. In the Prose Edda, this is it, and Suttungr went back defeated to Jotunheimr. In the Poetic Edda, the giants didn't seem to know who Bolverkr was. They came to ask after him, after the theft of the Mead of Poetry. They got to Asgarth and asked the gods if someone by the name of Bolverkr lived there. Odin told them he knew no one under that name. The giants insisted, and so Odin swore an oath on his ring Draupnir, which is an especially solemn oath. He swore there was no Bolverkr there, which in some ways was true, so he got away with it by bending the rules, as always. That trick is similar to the one Ulysses uses against the Cyclops when he says he's called nobody. But because Odin swore on his ring, and because we have only partial recollections of the complete tale, we're not sure what he swore. Maybe he simply swore Bolverkr wasn't there, or maybe he actually made a promise linked to Gunnlaug, saying that although he betrayed her, he would now make her his lawful wife. But in both cases he didn't hold his promise. So much for solemn oaths made on Draupnir. The morality of the story is, if you cheat, lie, change your name, force other people to respect their promises but never hold yours, then you'll end up king of the Vikings. Hiya! I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please leave a like or subscribe. It always makes me smile. You can also request which myth you'd like next in the comments. Next fortnight is Lokasenna, which involves lots of insults and Loki getting drunk. See you then!